Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So today, which is March 3rd, our last day before town meeting break, we are going to have final conversations about family medical leave today. Like to see, before we leave today, how close we can get to agreement, like a loose straw poll, I'm gonna call it. And then plan to vote on that when we get back from break. And then we're gonna do a first walkthrough of H158, the beverage container redemption system bill, at the very end of the day, 1 o'clock. And so with that, Damien has made a suite of changes based on all of the flags that we had yesterday. And we'll go from there.
Okay, great.
But this is like a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of day, everyone.
Yep. I think I have at least one flag that hit me since I drafted this. So for the record, Damien Leonard, Office of Legislative Counsel. We're looking at draft 2.1 of H66 dated before I started testifying yesterday. So that gives you a sense of how we've just been steadily making corrections here. So I'm gonna skip down the first one here under employer. We noticed we were missing the word bereavement, or the words bereavement leave. So that's been added. Moving down, this was another typographical error here. Just updating the cross-reference. Moving down. Okay, so this was another one. This is on, I'm sorry, Zoom is covering up all of the pertinent information for me. Sorry, page 14. And what this was is when I copied forward the language for the strikeout, I forgot to copy forward the new language. So this just shows that we put in the new language. I promise we'll get to more substantive changes soon.
This is a nice way to ramp up.
Drink your coffee, guys. Tea.
Thank you.
Caffeinate here. We're getting there. All right. Contributions. So section 2053 on page 20. So this generated some confusion yesterday, so I rewrote it. Hopefully it's more clear. So an employer shall be responsible for the full amount of contributions required on covered wages paid to the employer's employees and shall remit those amounts to the Department of Taxes. For purposes of paying the required contributions, the employer may deduct and withhold from an employee's covered wages an amount equal to not more than 1/2 of the contribution required.
So it leaves dangling whether an employer wants to go further.
Exactly.
That's
up to the employer.
That's cool.
The other changes there are just technical. Now enrolled self-employed individuals, similar change in B1, an enrolled self-employed individual shall be responsible for the full amount of contributions required on their covered work income and shall remit those amounts to the Department of Taxes. And then you'll see here in subdivision B2, I've said covered work income means an enrolled self-employed individual's net earnings from self-employment. That cross-references to a definition under the Internal Revenue Code. And in looking at that definition, we had a discussion yesterday about what's self-employment income and what's not. And there have been other questions that have come up, such as, hey, if I have an Airbnb in Vermont, is that self-employment income? In looking at this definition, it actually answers all of those questions. So the net earnings from self-employment it offers two different approaches to how you do business expenses. One to address the example that Representative Matos gave, where you have a business like a builder, for example, who buys a significant amount of materials. And so you don't want the gross revenue because a lot of that's going into the materials. And then you also have the accrual sort of business where you're providing services, but then you have business expenses that come up along the way. And so it covers both of those. It also says that real estate earnings are not self-employment income unless you're operating a real estate business. So if you're operating a business that Airbnb's multiple properties in Vermont, that would be self-employment income. If you have a family vacation home that you Airbnb on weekends when you're not there, that would likely not be self-employment income. And so it covers all of that. I can send the definition to the committee if that's helpful. It is a lot of really dense federal language, but Abby is looking at that now. We didn't have a chance to connect last night, but if we can come up with anything better, we'll use that if you're still not comfortable with this. But if it works, we can leave it as this.
It sounds great. And if you could email the deeper definition,
Sure.
I'll read it at some point today. I don't need to read it.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to have that full background.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's just straightforward language. I mean, I appreciate that, you know. There's some other things we get tangled up in with what does this mean after all? So that's perfectly straightforward.
Well, it is straightforward here. It's not as straightforward when you get into the Internal Revenue Code, but at least it's something that's a standard definition. So we're not reinventing the wheel.
We do our part and the IRS does their part, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and the contribution on covered wages paid to employees and on enrolled self-employed individuals' covered work income shall be 0.55%. So we're specifying it's the wages paid to employees, not necessarily the employee's wages. So trying to flip that. I took out, we had discussed covered wages that employers pay to employees, and I could switch back to that. I felt like this accomplished the same thing with fewer words.
Great.
Does that work? Okay. All right. Moving down to 22, the only change here, this is just renumbering because we added a new subsection. Same thing on 23 at letter E, and then in 2054, there had been some questions that had come up about could you file a claim for a leave that began before the program starts and then claim benefits, which would create a huge draw right off the bat. So to address that, we've just said benefits provided shall only be available for leaves beginning on or after January 1, 2026. The only tweak you may want to consider is, do you want to consider leaves that are currently occurring and just allowing for people to take benefits from January 1, 2026 onwards? The problem with that is that this is going to throw the modeling off. We would have to remodel expenses. So
I think we have to draw a line somewhere, and this is a good place to draw a line.
I think, I agree. That's what happened when Social Security started.
so
Do you
Age 65 after the date, not yesterday.
okay.
Amen.
The rest of the changes here are just renumbering. Moving on to page 24, this is the same thing. Eligibility, an individual shall be eligible to receive benefits for a leave beginning on or after January 1, 2026. Belts and suspenders. So the next change here, we've doubled the application processing time. So this is, I'm sorry, the Zoom covers up my page number. This is page 26. So we've doubled it from 5 to 10 business days for the initial processing And then we've doubled the extension time from 15 to 30 business days. The only question here is whether you want it to be 30 business days or 30 calendar days. So 30 business days is roughly 38 calendar days.
And this was, I asked for this based on testimony from
Connecticut.
Connecticut, thank you. And I think someone in another state said something as well. And then the treasurer actually had asked for this as well.
Yeah.
Better for them not to sort of start off behind.
Yeah.
Did they specify business or calendar when they
Let's
asked?
just
wanted it,
just leave business, yeah.
they just wanted it extended? Okay.
Yep. And this is not more than 30 business days. So it still provides, the ability, if you can get it in 10 business days, then they can do it then. The other thing that we've added here, and the chair asked me to add this subsection here, is in the event that an application is not approved within the time period provided because there was insufficient information or documentation, the employee or enrolled self-employed individual can submit a new application with additional information or documentation, provided that it's submitted within the 60 days before or 60 days after timeframe. So this would allow a second bite if people can't get their documentation together, rather than having to force them into an appeal right away. And then subdivision 2 says that if they submit a second application, any appeal is on that second application. They don't get to appeal the first application and submit a second.
And this was, we heard feedback about sort of the culture shift from folks who, sort of the difference between unemployment insurance and the way unemployment insurance is often delivered, which is sort of a default to no, and the culture of moving to a program like this, which, ideally an unemployment insurance system is also designed to support people, but that's really not how they operate. And so really the stress of going through a life event such as this and how hard it is to hear that your application has been rejected. And that's something that Representative Andrews highlighted as well.
I appreciate that this is straightforward. The old one's out, the new one's in. Not sending documents back and forth, all the complication that goes with it.
And it's only if there's insufficient documentation or information. If they've submitted documentation for a condition that clearly doesn't qualify, that's not included in this language. So this would basically be the division could come back and say, we don't have enough documentation to certify this condition. We have to deny your application, but you can submit a new application if you can pull together the documentation. So. Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right, we're skipping way ahead here. Okay, down to page 41. This is in the disqualifications and limitations. I was asked to clarify this. I've tried to make it a lot shorter and simpler. So an individual shall not receive benefits and remuneration that would result in the individual earning more than the individual's average daily wage on any single day or the individual's average weekly wage in any calendar week.
I'm sorry, Damien, could you tell me page number?
I'm sorry, 41.
Thank you.
Yep, and this is in 2065, page 41.
And this is to keep people from gaming the system, right?
Right, the idea is that we're preventing people from earning more than they would earn normally. But then we say in C, subject to the limitation in B, so you can't pay more than they would earn normally, an employer can provide remuneration to supplement the amount of benefits provided to an employee.
And so if someone makes more than the average weekly wage while they're working, their employer could sort of close that gap
Right.
while they're.
Yep.
Pay the difference.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. And everything else is just renumbering here, going through. So all of that was just renumbered and moved around a little bit. Going on to page, or section 2069 on page 44. This is the annual report. So I just reworded the start, beginning in 2027, the director on or before February 15th of each year. So this would give them a year of experience and then an annual report on program performance. And then we've added 2 new subdivisions here to the report information. The total number and percentage of claim denials that are reversed on appeal. And then the total number of claims that are approved following a second application submitted pursuant to that second chance provision I mentioned earlier.
And all of that is within sort of the bigger arch of the demographic information.
Right, and then the next thing we've done is we've extended the demographic information so that it will cover those 2 sections and also the demographics of the self-employed individuals.
Thank you.
Okay. So you'll see here throughout the definitions, beginning on page 46, I've switched over to net earnings from self-employment. With the employer, this is an issue that Representative Beck had asked about, and it was a good question because it brought up that because of the supremacy clause and the fact that there's actually a federal paid parental leave program for federal employees, but they've specifically not included other types of leave. We are not allowed to force them to pay into the program and participate. So we have to exclude the US government and any of its instrumentalities from employer.
Thanks for that, Kathy.
Yeah, that was a good catch.
Yeah. So, really appreciate questions like that force me to take a deep look and make sure I haven't missed something. So I'm sorry, I skipped way ahead.
Net earnings, yeah.
All right, great. So.
And back to the net earnings from self-employment. Abby, are you inside there?
I think she's on the Zoom.
I thought so too.
She is.
Sure, I'll stop the share.
Ah, there she
There
is.
she is.
Hi, Abby.
Oh,
Can't hear you, but your mouth is moving and you don't look muted. I'll hold my question for a few minutes while you find your way. Just, yeah, I think you should leave and come back. Bye.
okay.
We can just keep on going and I'll get back.
Yep. So net earnings from self-employment has the same meaning as in the Internal Revenue Code. It's actually the exact same cross-reference as before. The definition was there, and it turns out that we were actually using a definition that worked, but only up to the contribution and benefit for Social Security, the max contribution and benefit. So it's half of the base we were using. So switching to this covers, I mentioned to the committee earlier, this covers both the type of business expenses you were mentioning, which are more like a builder or someone who buys a lot of raw materials, and then also the businesses for someone who provides services. It also excludes sort of casual rental of like a family vacation location if you're not operating a rental company or a real estate company. And so there's a bunch of, it focuses it down on business expenses, and then it's the standard self-employment income that you'd be filling out on your IRS schedules.
Abby, do you want to try speaking again?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me this time?
Yes,
Great. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
For the record, Abby Shepherd, Office of Legislative Counsel. I have been listening to your conversation, but I just popped out there for a minute, so I'm not sure if you had a specific question.
Yeah, the net earnings from self-employment, that cross-reference, just want to get clear that that's pre-tax, and then sort of taxes levied on that.
Right. So Damien and I were emailing about that this morning. I haven't had a chance to really go into a deep dive. So I think Damien has a better grasp of it than I do at this point. My understanding is the cross-reference, right, or in the previous version was to self-employment tax, and that the new version is just to net. So that would be excluding all of the deductions and any of the other exclusions. But I can think through that more to make sure that it gets at pre-tax, because I know that's your concern.
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't have a definitive answer this morning. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so just for the committee's reference, and again, I'm going to defer to Abby on the pre-tax, post-tax, but this is the number that's used when you pay your self-employment tax, because you don't pay FICA. When you pay your self-employment tax, this is what the IRS uses. So I think it is a pre-tax.
Thank you. Glorious.
Yeah. All right. Go. Okay. The rest of the changes for the next couple subdivisions are just renumbering because self-employment income and net earnings from self-employment, different alphabetical order.
Damien, sorry, one second. Does anyone here have like a best friend or local pastor doing the devotional?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna just go a couple minutes into.
Almost there. So the next piece here is my wages definition wasn't clear yesterday, so I've tried to rewrite it. Wages shall not include any payments that's made to or on behalf of an employee or the employee's dependents under a plan or system established by an employer that provides insurance, annuities, or another fund or plan that provides for the employees or their dependents or any class of them on account of sickness, accident, or disability. So you'll notice it provides insurance, annuities, or a fund or plan. And two, it's on account of sickness, accident, or disability, medical or hospitalization expenses connected with one of those, or death. So, better?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, can I just look at that sentence once, just go up another
Yep. So,
fund?
Here, people.
Oh, I see, okay.
yep.
Again,
Yeah.
got rid
So,
of 5 oars. When-
I apologize.
No, that's okay.
moves.
That's much better.
This was the biggest chunk of my drafting time last night, was trying to distill this down to something that was legible. I hope it worked, but,
I think it did.
Yep.
It does, yeah.
okay. So, then the next one, this one we didn't have problems with yesterday, but because we renumbered, I could renumber everything, and I just tried to clean it up a little. This is the paid 6 months after the last day of employment. And then the last one is the 401ks and 403bs, other similar funds. Questions? Okay, section 7 is renumbered because this was actually, I had 2 section 6s. So
Yeah.
renumbered that. Section 8 renumbered. Section 9 is renumbered. Section 10 is a new report, and this would provide progress reports annually on January 15th of 24, 25, and 26 from the division and the Department of Taxes regarding basically the progress made in implementing the program, including the development of IT, sorry about that, the adoption of rules, creation of forms, hiring and training of staff, and the development of informational materials and outreach programs. Shall also provide a projected timeline for implementation and include any recommendations for additional legislative action. Is that good?
Is that,
Yep.
is that date all right? You were trying to get to December dates, weren't you?
Oh, thank you. When is that one due?
It's due January 15th. I could do December,
Can you do December 15th, plese?
sure.
It's my
And it would
life
be
key. Thank you for reminding me.
23, 24, and 25.
Yep,
if you go to December.
yeah. All right. All right. This is the same report on reserves, but I added a sentence at the end that said it shall also include an analysis of informational resources, legislation, or other measures, that could be and other measures that could potentially improve the long-term solvency of the fund and the division's ability to accurately determine the appropriate reserve, including the potential for actuarial analysis or the implementation of a counter-cyclical funding mechanism. That just means when the economy is good, it pulls in more funding, and when the economy is bad, it drops taxes on employers and employees. So that would be similar to what Washington has, but obviously you'd want to implement it a little differently because of the problems they've had.
And this is just to sort of, let the treasurer's office really, as they do all the due diligence they're going to be doing over the next time, come back to us with recommendations.
Okay. Section 12, private plans, just a renumber. Section 13, the appropriations is a renumber here. And Madam Chair, do you want to talk about?
Yes, thank you.
that?
So in pursuit of this bill having a smooth journey, I've been sort of talking to the appropriations folks a little bit to get ready for it. This is a very large number to send from one committee to another committee. And so I've asked JFO to look at what it takes to sort of drop that in half, and which is essentially sort of peeling 6 months off and making the program start 6 months later, but the appropriation would be in half. Because it's just a very large number. Yeah.
Yeah, together, I just think it would be, add to people's comfort level if the start of contributions and start of benefits were closer, as well as stretching out the.
So this is actually so the original bill as came to us had a very long ramp up between, and we closed it essentially completely with this number.
Yeah.
It's a little too close. And so this would be, people would be paying in for 6 months to build up the reserve, and then sort of the usual 3 months that's built into the program, and then they would get their benefits. If we split this number in half, essentially.
Improvements for sure.
Okay.
And so we can talk about this a little bit more when we come back, but Pat has numbers for that, and that's.
Yeah, once Pat.
Figured better we did it than give appropriations more things to do.
Yep.
Yeah, once Pat gets the numbers, I'll update that. And the other update is actually going to be in the next two sections. The next thing for us is just to reach out to Department of Taxes and the Treasurer's Office to get specific positions. So right now we know roughly the number of FTEs, but we don't know, are they attorneys, are they accountants, are they administrative staff? So that will be other clarification. Section 16, 17, section 16 and 17 are renumbered. And then this was a clarifying change that came from Abby following conversations with Commissioner Bolio. And I think Patrick was also involved in those conversations. So this is just to clarify that the transfer of credits is for the taxable year. So it's just giving some timing around what sort of credits transfer we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Our options were like day by day and we're just saying for the taxable year. So as necessary to handle that. Section 18 is just renumbered, and then because of the renumbering and the new sections and the fact that I had 2 section 6s, we've added 3 sections to subsection A here. And then we've renumbered what used to be sections 14 and 15 as sections 17 and 18. And then the other piece is the dates on the last page, depending on the appropriation, will change.
The 6 months.
Okay.
Wow.
What section is that new reporting? Or
That new report it's in one of the July 1, 2023 sections, but I'll find it for you. That is the new section 10. So we bumped out the sections after that. So if you look at that, it's in section 10. We had 2 section 6s, so everything bumped out 1. We added a new section 10, so everything bumped out 2. And because I had to move the and, I've highlighted 3 there. So. Great.
Thank you very much. We will have a committee conversation about this after the floor